OP Jindal, OP Jindal Global University. We are very glad to have you on board, madam. On behalf of management of Clearly, the entire faculty and the participants, I welcome you, ma'am. Some housekeeping before we start with the program. I would like to seek your cooperation in completing this interactive session. Kindly switch off your microphone and webcam so that no disturbance is caused during the conduct. And if you have any questions during the presentation, please type the same in the chat box. We'll bring them up during interactive session. To begin with, I would like to request Principal Dr. Srimati J.S. Kaulekar, Madam, to take over the platform and address the audience. Over to you, ma'am.
Very good afternoon, everyone. I'm delighted to welcome you all to the interactive webinar for teachers on mental health concerns in today's youth, hosted by Kearney Society Belagavi on the eve of the 106th Foundation Day celebration. Now, let me say a few words about our illustrious Kearney Society. Our Kearney Society was founded on November 13, 1916, by 7 dedicated teachers known as Saptarishis, who first founded an Anglo-vernacular school in Belagavi, which has been serving thousands of people in the field of education for a century and plus. Originally intended to provide basic literacy to the children of the farming community, it has evolved into a fantastic educational organization with over 270 institutions, which include schools, colleges, health science and technical institutions, research centers, business schools, and agricultural sectors. Kearney Society also has 2 universities, the Kearney Technological University to keep pace with rapid global technological transformation, and Kearney Academy of Higher Education and Research, facilitating relevant research and providing easy, accessible, modern, and affordable healthcare to millions of people in the region and beyond. Kearney Society also has collaborations with universities in the United States, United Kingdom, and Malaysia, which has given the Kearney Society a whole new dimension, putting it on par with reputable educational institutions all over the world. The founding fathers' legacy of selfless service and sacrifice has been carried on by the management to this day. The society operates institutes in almost all the parts of Karnataka districts as well as parts of Maharashtra and New Delhi. The fate of an institution is determined by the leadership choices it makes, and the institution made such a choice in 1984 when it elevated our Honorable Chairman Dr. Prabhakar Koreji to the chairmanship of the Board of Management of Kearney. Dr. Prabhakar Kore sir initiated a great transformation in the making of the new Kearney with his determined spirit and youthfulness, not only increasing the number of Kearney institutions from 38 to 270, but also creating a roadmap for the next generation to follow with the active support of his elected members and the combined efforts of everyone in Kearney, including members of the trust, students, and faculty members in making Kearney an international education destination. Our Kearney Society's vision is to be a global leader in the dissemination of high-quality education, healthcare, and research rooted in the ideals of democratic values, charitable virtues, and philanthropic culture. The mission is to inspire stakeholders to develop technically sound, ethically strong, and morally elevated individuals who will be socially responsible, productive, and useful global citizens. Our Kearney Society adopts a holistic education concept, focusing not only on quality education, but also on the formative phase of life, the youth, the most important phase of life that has major implications for the future as stated in our vision and mission. This stage is particularly important for mental health because the majority of mental health problems begin at a young age and many of them progress to a chronic state. As a result, our society places a premium on the youth's ability to thrive and manage life's challenges, which have a significant impact on mental health, and where youth require assistance to navigate the challenges that come with mental health, particularly during the times of crisis, such as following the outbreak of COVID-19 pandemic, where governments all over the world rushed to implement social distancing, quarantine, and isolation measures. These measures, while necessary, can have a significant impact on the mental health of young people, being away from school, work, and peers, as well as adjusting to new ways of learning and working, intensify fear, anxiety, anger, sadness, and grief. Our goal is to provide a platform for genuine connections among young people in the face of uncertainty, encouraging them to interact and raising mental health awareness among them, as well as increasing demand for integrated mental health and psychological interventions. As a result, our Clearly Society has decided to host an interactive webinar on mental health concerns in today's youth, especially for teachers, where teachers need to know and how they can help the students. For this interactive session, we have a very eminent speaker amidst us, Dr. Kanika Malik, Assistant Professor, Jindal School of Counseling and Psychology, OP Jindal Global University, Sonipat, India. Madam, on behalf of our Clearly Society, all the participants, the entire faculty, and my own behalf, I warmly welcome you to today's interactive webinar and thank you for accepting our invitation. I extend a warm and a hearty welcome to the distinguished participants of the webinar. Hearty welcome to our beloved chairman, Dr. Prabhakar Kore sir, and all the respectable members of the Clearly management. Welcome to the entire Clearly family. I would like to end by urging everyone to make the most of this webinar. Thank you. Thank you once again.
Thank you so much, madam. Well, moving ahead, I am profoundly delighted to take this opportunity to introduce the resource person, Dr. Kanika Malik, madam. Madam has completed her graduation in psychology from Jesus and Mary College, University of Delhi, Masters in Clinical Psychology from the University of Delhi, MPhil in Clinical Psychology from Institute of Human Behavior Allied Sciences, Delhi, and has pursued her PhD in Clinical Psychology, National Institute of Mental Health and Neurosciences, Hosur Road, Bangalore. Madam has a huge experience in various fields, be it clinical expertise, research field, and teaching. She has been a coordinator in the Pride Project, Sanghat, Delhi, from July 2016 to October 2017. Has undertaken core responsibilities including designing treatment manuals, training and competency protocols, implementation of the treatment through clinical care of adolescents with emotional and behavioral disorders, and training supervision of counselors in the delivery of intervention. In the research field, she has been a lead investigator on Swasti Catalyst funded project on scaling up Pride Stepped Care program in the schools of Bangalore from July 2020 to May 2021. She has held formal lectures for undergraduate and postgraduate students of nursing, psychiatry, and clinical psychology in NIMHANS. 3 years of experience in training and supervision of clinical psychology trainees in NIMHANS. It involved demonstration of psychiatric case history taking, psychological assessments, discussion of intakes, brief therapies, and follow-ups. So far, Madam has presented 23 national and international papers and 16 publications. Highlighting the most recent ones, Madam has presented research paper titled addressing refractory adolescent mental health problems, formative evaluating of a transdiagnostic modular treatment in Indian secondary schools under the symposium entitled Transdiagnostic Stepped Care School Counseling System, the PRIDE program in India, in the 53rd Annual Convention ABCT 2019 held at Atlanta, United States. Also has presented a research paper titled Temperament and Personality in Addiction, Empirical Review under the symposium entitled Temperament, Personality and Addiction, Risks and Intervention in the World Congress of Mental Health 2017 held at Delhi. Madam also has a publication entitled Behavioral Activation as an Active Ingredient of Interventions Addressing Depression and Anxiety Among Young People, a systematic review and evidence synthesis. She has been a resource speaker in consultative workshop organized by UNICEF and WHO on the development of helping adolescents thrive at Cape Town, South Africa during October 2019. Madam is currently working as Assistant Professor, Jindal School of Counseling and Psychology, OP Jindal Global University. With this brief introduction, I present before you all Dr. Kanika Malik, Madam. Now I request Madam to take over the session. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Pooja, for such a great introduction. And thank you, ma'am, for letting me know the great legacy that KLE has built. It's good to know the great amount of work you have been doing for teachers as well as for the youth. So today I will be talking about youth mental health. What are the concerns youth have in today's time and how teachers can get involved in understanding them as well as helping them. So just before these are the topics I plan to cover today. Before I start, I actually want to say what I'm going to talk about here today. Usually we do it over half a day or 1 day of workshop. So, you just don't listen to it. You actually get more hands-on skills to work with the adolescents and the youth you are dealing with in your classrooms. But I understand today was just a webinar. So my aim is just to give you an overview of, what are mental health problems, how they manifest, the underlying reasons, and as a society and as a teacher, what you can do to help youth. Hopefully after today's talk, you have some understanding. And if you are interested, maybe we can follow up at a later stage to do a more of a hands-on workshop where you actually get to apply and use these various skills to help, youngsters you are dealing in your classroom as well as, around you at home. So just let's start with something interactive. On your screen, you have some statements. I have 8 statements about what is mental health. I'm going to read one by one statement. And after each statement, I will pause for a few seconds. In the chat box, I want you to type true or false in response to each statement. You have to tell me whether you think the statement is true or a false. So the first one is, only certain kind of people develop mental health problem. It's true or false? Please send your responses in chat box. Oops. Okay. Thank you for responses. Now I go on to second one. There are many different types of mental health problems. Mental health problem is not one, but there are many different types of mental health problem. True or false? Great to see so many people responding. Third one. Most people who have mental health problems end up in hospital. True or false? Okay. The fourth one. If you think you have a mental health problem, you should talk to someone about it. True or false? Fifth one, people are born with mental health problems. I can see a few hands are raised. You can give your responses in chat box. We will come back to each statement very soon. Sixth one, you can tell someone has a mental health problem by looking at them. Sorry, it's not then, it's by looking at them. True or false? Seven, you cannot recover from mental health problems. That's true or false? And last, people with mental health problems are likely to be violent. True or false? So these are statements about mental health that not only concern youth, but people across development age. And let's look at what I know about these statements. The first statement, it says only certain kind of people have mental health problem. That's false. Anyone can develop a mental health problem. Mental health problem can be due to a number of reasons. There can be genetic reasons. Some of the mental health problems known to have genetic basis, but that's really small part of it. People can develop mental health problems due to multiple reasons. It can be stress, which can be coming from their job. It can be stress that is coming from their life. It can be an uneventful thing happening in their life, something like a divorce, loss of financial wealth, not able to clear their exam. So it can be, multiple reasons that can trigger mental health problem. Genetics is very small part of it, but all of us have a vulnerability to develop mental health problem. The more stressful our environment, the more losses we experiences, the higher the risk that person may develop a mental health problem if they are not able to cope well. I want to emphasize not everyone who go through stresses have mental health problems. It's only once individual go through stresses, but they're not able to cope well, they can develop mental health problem. There are many different types of mental health problem. True. Mental health problem is just an umbrella term, and there are many different kinds of it. We have emotional problems, which are, mental health problem. We have behavioral problem. We have substance use and addiction problem. We have, adjustment related problems. So mental health problems can be a multiple time. Different individuals can show different kind of problems. Some may have purely emotional problems like, having depression or anxiety, or behavioral problem where, they have a lot of conduct issue, have a lot of anger related issue, substance use problem where there's dependency, they use alcohol or drugs excessively, and other adjustment related disorders and stress related disorders. So there are multiple kind of it. Different individuals may manifest different kind of problem. Most people who have mental health problem end up in hospital. That's false. That's not true at all. Majority of individuals who have mental health problems don't need hospitalization. They can be easily managed either at home with the support from the family members and relatives, or through counseling and medication at home. Only a very small percentage of people who have mental health problems need to be hospitalized. Most don't. If you think you have a mental health problem, you should talk to someone about it. That's right. If you think you're doubtful, you're concerned, it's really important you talk to someone about it. Someone you trust, someone you feel will be able to guide you and provide the right amount of information and not make fun of you. It's really important to talk about it. You may have a problem, you may not have a problem, but talking to someone who is trusted, genuine, supportive, really will help you get the right kind of feedback and some support in coping through these difficulties. People are born with mental health problem? No. For majority of individuals, the mental health problems do set in, and most of the mental health problems start in early ages, before age of 15, but people are not born with mental health problem. Mental health problems tend to develop over time. There are neurodevelopment problems which people are born with, like lower IQ, autism, Asperger, but they are not considered as pure mental health problems. So people are not born with it, but rather they develop mental health problem over years. You can tell someone has a mental health problem by looking at them. False. Majority of individuals who have mental health problem will look totally normal, will look like me and you and anyone else. Many of them are highly functional. They will be able to carry out day-to-day activities quite well, perform well at their job, teach, interact. So many of individuals who have mental health problems suffer in silence. You might not even notice they have mental health problem. You have heard news in news many times to show this person was okay. I'm not sure why he committed suicide. This person looked totally fine. I'm not sure why he's going to psychiatrist. He looks okay. She looks okay. So they look okay. There's nothing on their face or body that will tell you mental health problem. It's mental health, which means it's related to mind and brain. Most of the time, individuals do look normal. You cannot recover from mental health problem. Again, false. Mental health problems have a very high rate of recovery. As I said, majority of individuals can be managed at home with right support from family, counselors, and psychiatrists. Few may require hospitalization. If right help is provided to the individual, there's a high chance they will recover and able to go back to their day-to-day life. Only individuals who don't get help, have chronic conditions, may have a poor rate of recovery. So that's only a small percentage of problem. People with mental health problem likely to be violent. False. That's one of the biggest myths. As I said, many of the mental health problems, you will see people who have mental health problem, they look very normal, carry out day-to-day activities very normal. You will not know, they are suffering. It's only a small minute of population which have a very severe kind of mental health problem, where they lose touch with reality. They're not able to distinguish what is right and wrong. That's a very small population. They may show violent behavior, but that's a very small percentage of population. Most of the individuals with mental health problem, whether children or adult, don't show any kind of violence toward themselves or the other person. So these are just the answers which I've shared. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask. If you feel differently about these statements, you can share your point of view, why you think it's different, and how will you have interpreted the statement. So I can see in the chat back, most of you got it quite a few responses right and some wrong. So I hope once I've clarified, this has helped you to get the right kind of information. Now, what is mental health? We have talked so much about what is right about mental health, what is wrong about mental health, but what is mental health? This is a definition which has been given by World Health Organization, and most of us use this definition to define mental health. So if you look at this definition, it says that mental health is more than, absence of mental illness. It's not that if I don't have a mental illness, I am mentally healthy. It requires an individual to have multiple things. One, they can work towards their own potential, that if they want to do something, whether professionally, personally, they're able to work towards their potential. When they experience stress in their life, they're able to cope and manage with it. Third, they can contribute productively and fruitfully. So whether you're a homemaker or you're a professional, whatever area you're involved with, you're able to make productive contribution to it. And then also can contribute to the community at larger. Whether, with supporting individual, talking to other individual, arranging program, coming together as a group. So individual who's called as mentally healthy is an individual who can work towards his potential, can cope with normal stressors, which all of us experience, can work productively at home or at office, and is able to contribute to community at the larger whole. Most of us are able to do the first three part quite well. Community contribution may be minor for most of us. For some of us, it may be a major one. But the fact that we can contribute, we can make an effort, that's the most important part. You have the potential to do that, and you're ready to work on it once given a chance. So when WHO look at mental health, it says, to be mentally healthy, you should be able to have all these characteristics within you. If you're lacking some of these characteristics, it's possible that you have some form of mental health issues and you may benefit from one or the other kind of help. So if you look at this definition, it will, make us feel that possibly a large number of individuals do have difficulty, and that's true. A lot of individuals have difficulty in mental health. They may be struggling, they may be having enormous amount of stress, they are not able to cope, not able to perform at the work at up to the maximum potential, not able to realize their potential. They want to be at point Y, but they're still at X. But not everyone has mental illness. Poor mental health, again, is not equivalent to mental illness. The fact I'm experiencing stress doesn't mean I'm mentally ill. The fact I'm having difficulties at work and I'm, not able to cope with it doesn't mean I have mental illness. Yes, I have mental issues. I'm experiencing stress. I will benefit from some help, but that is not on, mental illness. So when we talk about mental health and mental illness, we think it as of a line, a continuum line. On the extreme left is mental health, and on the extreme right, we have mental illness. And most of us fall in between in this line, that we don't have mental illness, but we also not fully mentally healthy. We are struggling, but every day we are trying to cope and move to the extreme left, that we stay on as healthy as possible and not move towards the extreme right. But some individuals are not able to maintain the balance and they tip towards more of extreme right. So now let's look at youth mental health more closely. Now, when it comes to the youth mental health, it has been recognized that suicide is the major cause of mortality in young people. So majority of death across worldwide in the youth age of 10 to 24 are caused by suicide. And it has been quite well established that majority of individuals who commit suicide either have a mental illness or were under great amount of stress. So their mental health was highly disturbed. So among young people, that has been established as one of the biggest cause of death, that poor mental health led to suicide in these individuals. The second important statistic, depression. Across world, globally, it has been recognized that depression is the leading cause of disability in young people. When I say disability, it means it makes them not able to function in their day-to-day life up to their maximum potential. So if you remember, we talked about able to work on their potential and contribute fruitfully. So it has been found that depression is a major disturbing factor. It adds to burden. So a young person is not able to study well, take on a job, contribute to their interpersonal life as well as expected. And that's because of depression. Depression is the major cause there. And because of that, young people in their productive years lose a lot in terms of education, job, or forming relationship. And that also, lead to a lot of economic losses. So this is a productive age group. They are not able to contribute fruitfully, which also means our economy comes down. So it is a leading cause of burden across world, leading to economic growth as, affecting the economic growth as well as individual growth. The third important statistic, 50% of the mental health problem begin by age of 14. So although I said people are not born with mental health illness, but mental illnesses actually start developing very early in the age. Majority of adults who have mental health problem have their onset before the age of 14. So some symptoms will start showing, some signs will start showing before, by the time they start turning 14 and 15. And this is the time they are in school. So which means, if they can get right kind of help at this stage, we could actually prevent them from progressing into severe mental illness and help them have a better adulthood. So this is a stage where they're more vulnerable, but this is also a stage where if they get the right kind of help, many of the difficulties which they're going to experience later in their life could be prevented and their life quality can be improved. So this is what we knew about the mental health in adolescence before the pandemic hit. These were the important statistics about youth mental health, globally known about the adolescents before pandemic happened. But what happened when pandemic hit? Pandemic hit all the countries. There was a similar situation. There were high spread of illnesses. Schools was closed down. Most of the offices closed down. So life almost came to a halt for a few months. It did resume back, but it did not resume back the way it was originally. It's still in the process of getting to normalization. So during this process, when we ask young people across the globe, how your mental health is there, we saw a sudden shoot of mental health problems. A lot of young people in age of 10 to 24, 10 to 30 actually started reporting of the mental health problem, particularly depression and anxiety. They started reporting being more sad. The sadness is so much, they're not able to come out of it. They don't feel like doing anything. They're not able to make decisions. They are not able to enjoy anything. And anxiety, where they felt a lot of nervousness, crippling feeling, heart pounding, not able to sleep, not able to concentrate. So young people started reporting a lot of depression, anxiety, and this rate, the 27-15%, is double of the pre-existing rate. So what rates we had before pandemic, they almost double immediately within 3 to 4 months of pandemic setting in. Young people across the globe started reporting a lot of anxiety and depression. They also started reporting being less motivated, not wanting to do anything. So usually we consider, this is the age group where people are more energetic, they want to do activities, they have all energy. But now these young people said, they don't feel like going out. Even if they feel like going out, they have so limited avenues. They feel more sad when you recognize they can't step out, they can't go to the parks that are locked, theaters are locked, gyms are locked. So they were not sure, they can't go out and play with their peers. So they started feeling more demotivated about, what to do and what they can carry out in day-to-day life. And it was found, women, the young children, the young women, the girls actually had much more difficulty than boys. They reported much more problem as compared to the boys. Life changed for them a lot. So many of the girls who were going to school, getting an opportunity to grow, learn new things, actually lost that opportunity. Now they're suddenly stuck at the home, don't get much of the education exposure. Now they have to take much more responsibility at home, take care of their father, brother, or other males in a home now who are sitting at home and trying to work from home or find opportunity to employ themselves. So they have to take the load of taking care of the family. Some of them continue with their education and job, and then they also have to take care load of at home, catering to various men, whether it's their grandfather, their father, or their brothers, supporting them, their younger sisters. So load on them became double. They had to continue with their education and job wherever possible, or lose them because they became second priority. The priority was to retain male in jobs, and they also had to cater to the home life much more. And they did not get the sort of respite that many of young girls get when they go to school. Once they are in school, the pressure of taking care at home, taking care of the sibling, not having food, that constant struggle that they're inferior, they do forget about them. They get great opportunities. So all of them were taken away. And it was realized that girls were reporting at double rate the problems with depression, anxiety as compared to the boys. And what's now? Is the situation better? Now we are up like almost 1.5 years into pandemic. Things are trying to go back to normal life. Are things better? Yes, they are better. A lot of young, school students and college students say they have tried and, just to this new life and are very excited to go back to the new normal, which we're going to experience. But there are a lot of students who are still struggling. So this survey found that 38% of students reported they struggle a lot in terms of intellectual well-being. So a lot of students do reported difficulties in, maintaining concentration, able to take back studies, go back to school and take a full-fledged, life and cope with all 1.5 years of education. They did reported difficulties. Students also reported difficulty in emotional well-being. They felt, they feel less confident. They're feeling a little more apprehensive. They feel a little more stressed, on taking on this new life. It's a lot of change has happened in 1.5 years. And now they have to go back and go to the new life, the so-called the new normal life that has been causing them a lot of stress. Or the fact they don't get to go back to school or their workplaces is a continuous stress because they have to manage work and home now continuously. And many reported difficulties in social well-being, that they feel more isolated. They're still feeling more isolated. They're not able to connect back. So now many students started going to school, but their friends are not going to school. So they're not happy. I am going, but my friend is not going. How I'm going to connect with them? Or even if I'm in school, we have to sit really far, far away. We don't get games period to play along, with my friends. So this entire sense of connection with other students and, other relatives, it's still something that's bothering them. So although we are 1.5 years into pandemic, many of us students have been able to adjust and are functioning normally, but others have been experiencing stress, which is affecting their ability to study and concentrate, their feeling of stress, overly feeling overwhelmed and stressed, and the feeling of connections with the other person. So in this survey, young people reported difficulties of varying kind. They said they have lost great schools, admissions in university, because at that time they could not pay fee or join remotely. And thus, they're still worried what will their future look like. Many said they're highly concerned about the study. So although many schools and colleges move to the online mode, many find it very difficult to cope with the online mode. Online mode means they have to do a lot by themselves. That constant support from teachers is not available. The advice is not available. Peers are not helping each other. So many struggles saying, we have struggled a lot in last 1.5 years with remote education. And now when we go back to our usual classes, we feel there might be a lag. We have missed 1.5 years of education and we are not sure how we're going to cope with it. And the last concern, which do remain, very important then, is this financial stability. In most countries across the world, people have lost jobs, which means their parents, their elders, their elder sibling, many of them have lost a job, which means family are under financial constraint. So having a proper housing, ability to pay school fees or college fees, ability to, finding a job in today's market when number of jobs have actually come down. That's other thing, financial stability at house, that has been another concern which these young people have at this stage. Where I'm going to go with my education, what the future look like, and what about the financial stability at my home. So these have been a lot of factors that have caused worry. And this is just a survey from India. This has been done by an organization called Sangat, where they have talked to young people in India. Previously, what I've showed is basically a global picture across the world. And this is specifically for India. And here also you will see there's not much difference. You could see a large number of young people who are between age of 18 and 30 have reported feeling stressed till now, are anxious, although we're saying COVID is better, you're going to the normal life, but they're still anxious, how they're going to cope with it. Many are still feeling depressed, not have right of resources. They have lost their significant other. Some family member has died. There's significant family resources difficulties. They may have own struggle for academic. So that has led to a lot of depression. 14% of adolescents have said they are moderate, and few feel very, very depressed. And we have also noticed there has been an increase in alcohol and tobacco in these young people in past few years. Now they are at home. Some have been using under stress. Some have been using as a mean of enjoyment. There's nothing else. Let me drink and smoke. For various reasons, young people have been reporting much more use of tobacco and alcohol than it was pre-pandemic. So it's a lot of statistics. But once you look at the statistic, did something stood out for you? Did you find something surprising? You never thought this is like this right now, but I'm surprised to know conditions are like these. Or do you have some statistics which you would like to add to this picture? Anyone would like to share their feedback? Looking at these numbers, did they surprise you, or you expected them, or you have of a different picture and you would like to share? Thanks, Afra. Yeah, I believe, these statistics, most of us don't feel surprised, feel that they're quite expected, because that's how, we have seen young people and adolescents around us. Some of us, are quite surprised something like this is happening. Is this really the struggle the young people are going through? I thought, they are very resilient. They should have coped well. Chote se hai, they could have managed. But yeah, that's a reality. A lot of, at least 1/4 of our population, young population, is struggling. And around 10% of them seem to have developed mental illnesses at a much higher rate than it was a pre-pandemic. Okay, now what do you think? I have gave you 3-sided picture. Pre-pandemic, the mental health problem, during pandemic, and post-pandemic, which is towards the end phase of pandemic. They seem to be having mental health problems at different stages. Pre-pandemic, also this group was very vulnerable, had very high rate of mental health problem. As I said, 50% of mental health problems start at this stage. During pandemic, it actually shot quite a bit. Now at this time, it has been coming down. And many adolescents and young people are saying they are able to resume and continue life in so-called normality, but some are still struggling. So what do you think are the reasons why young people have mental health problems? If they can be emotional reasons, yes. So what kind of emotional reason you think students will have that cause them to have problems, mental health problems? they are very emotional. What else you can think, are making them have mental health problems? So one thing is that these group is an emotional group. Academic stress, great Viresh Kumarji. They can be academic stress that can cause mental health problem. They're emotional as an individual. What do you think else can cause the problem? Lack of care at home and social support can cause. Peer pressure, fear, physical changes. Great. So I think looking at the response in chat box, it's great, all of you are able to think about these things. So just, I want to, take you a step back and talk about this. If you look at this adolescent, it's a very vulnerable period of life. This is the stage in human life where maximum changes happen in each domain of growth. So physically, these adolescents are growing up, right? There's a lot of changes in their body structure, in this hormones level, in their brain maturity. So a lot of brain is still going and it keeps growing till age of 23, 24. So a lot of brain is growing, and especially this frontal lobe, the top portion, which we call in the brain, is called frontal lobe. And this is the reason, this is the area responsible for thinking and problem solving. So it's still developing in these, adolescents and young adults, by the age of 23, 24, it's still developing. So which means that thinking and problem solving abilities are not very great. That's why, we feel adolescents are like around us are so rash, they're so rude, they don't understand, nothing goes in their brain. Parents keep shouting at them, you don't understand, you don't understand. Yes, they can't understand because their frontal lobe is still developing. This is a area responsible for thinking, problem solving, moral reasoning. So it's developed. It's better than what they had at 5 years. It's better, but it's not fully developed. So that's why they tend to be more immature, impulsive, rude, because their brain is still developing. It will take time. The more we support them, the more exposure they get, it's easier to, development is faster. The more difficult experience they have, the development is actually difficult. And then adjusting to, the whole changes in boys and girls, have a new look can be actually difficult for a lot of people today, especially in today's time when there's so much social media pressure. These body changes can be really tough for these adolescents to cope with. They constantly understand how they look, how they speak, what they dress up. So just going through so much of the bodily changes and then coping with this constant pressure and vigilance can be a lot. So which again put them at risk for mental health problem. Cognitive, as I said, because the brain is still developing, they are not able to think as well as a mature adult of a 30, 35. They can't think, my pros and cons completely, or what would be the great long-term consequences if I'm going to act in this way. Certain abstract concept or, thinking long-term, those are skills which are still supposed to them. They intellectually understand, but able to operationalize them is difficult because brain is still under development. Emotionally also, they're quite immature. Ability to delay gratification, adolescents, we know, they just want, they really don't care whether parents have money, whether you can't get them right now. It's very difficult for them to do that. Again, because the brain is under development. Their hormones are still stabilizing. So all of this make it very difficult for them to control their emotions. So they lose temper very quickly. They are very impulsive. They want things to get done immediately. If they're feeling sad, they tend to feel really, really, really sad. And if they're happy at the top of the hill. So they also have these extreme emotions and find it difficult to curtail emotions as much as a mature adult is able to do that. And this important process of identity development. So this is a stage where adolescents do, where it is a stage where people develop their identity. Adolescence is considered as an important stage. Whether it's a gender identity, whether, I follow binary classification, male or female, or, whether I want to belong to an LGBTIQ community, or other kind of identity, whether I want to follow same things as my family or have a different passion, whether I want to look like, and do things which are similar to my friends or have something different. So all kind of identity, my sexual identity, my professional identity, my friendship identity, my, relationship with family, all of these, is a stage where it gets developed. So that's why this looked like a very turmoil period. Most of the, people will say adolescence is a period of nuisance. Many adults around them find like this is a period my child is most difficult to handle. But if you look at it on the slide, the number of changes they are going through, See how much turmoil it is for them. So much news happening to them. They have to make so much new senses. And also their brain is not fully developed. The body is not fully developed. And they have to grapple through all these concepts. So they have a lot of internal turmoil, which also do get reflected, outside. And we get the feeling, these adolescents, these teenagers are the most difficult group to handle. But it's a period, and most of the adolescents are able to navigate through these changes over time and emerge as healthy adults. But many adolescents do get stuck. They are not able to navigate through one or the other challenges, and that can give rise to mental health problems and finally mental illnesses. So what are the reasons youth can have multiple problems? I think some have already hinted. There's just high performance standards and expectation. I think someone has already talked about the pressures. So there are multiple kind of pressures. Pressures in school to excel, pressure from peers, how they talk, what language they should use, pressure from home, pressure from general social media, how they should look like. Instagram has, created this all false reality, what your career should look like, how you should look like, what your family should look like, how many travels you should take. So all of this, there's constant pressure. They actually are dealing with it. And this leads to setting up a very high self-expectation that my life should be perfect. I should be always Instagram ready. I should always look fashionable. My career should be always on the, forward moving trend. My education should be perfect. I should have 100% score. So they have set a very high self-expectation, and not able to meet those, again, give rise to a lot of mental health problems. Second is this negative media influence. So the image they are creating, as I said, it's a lot of false reality. The amount of glamorization we have all read about, newspaper, the photographs that get published on Instagram have all 100 of filters applied to them. Everything that get published in a fashion magazine, again, all of multiple, layers of glamorizing. When they talk about the success, they just talk about all good things. No one talk about struggle this person has to go in. Yes, they moved to US and they are CEO of Microsoft, but this person has gone through a lot of struggles. No one talked about their struggle. Or if a woman is the CEO of a Pepsi company, what she had to go managing their work-life balance, no one talk about it. So they just see the glamorous side and believe that life has to be glamorous and easy. You get things easy, life should be easy. So when they get struggles, they get setbacks, they're not able to deal with it because this is not a part of their expectation. This is not a world which media has created to them. So that again, give rise to a lot of mental health problems. The other thing is bullying. So earlier the bullying was just about, kids teasing each other, hurting each other in school, which itself was a big problem. That was causing a lot of mental health problems. But now bullying has taken another level, which is cyberbullying. We have, all of you may have heard reports on Facebook, on Instagram, not having that many likes. The number of comments they get, the sort of comments they get has been so stressful for many adolescents and young people. To the extent they have actually taken their life because, what comments came in their YouTube video was not that impressive and they feel they're not worth it and they ended up taking up their life. So bullying again has taken another level. And now these people who are perpetrating bullying are faceless people. So they are behind the internet. So you don't even know their name. You don't know where they live. So you can't even go down and talk to them. At least in school, that was an option. So this has become more and more difficult for young people to manage. The socioeconomic condition, environmental risk factors. So someone already talked about different people have different family. Some people are brought, have upbringing in a violent family or family which doesn't have that much good finances, have a lot of struggling, or from a tribal background, or SC, ST caste. A lot of these people are still, even in today's world, are marginalized. They're not given right. People don't want to talk to their parents, not talk to them, and they don't get sort of that right. Parents neglect at home. Some parents don't have time, or because they have to work day in and out, they're not able to support their children. There's violence at home. There's continuous domestic violence. Living in that atmosphere again can lead to sense of insecurity, and all of these can again increase risk to mental health problem. And lastly is this barrier toward health. So In India, that's a concern. Majority of people, if they're struggling and stressed, they don't talk, whether it's adolescents or adults. All of us struggle in silence. We don't go and talk about experiences to other people, specifically men and boys. They don't talk about it. They don't let other people they're struggling. They don't want to seek emotional support. And not seeking emotional support, even from people around it. Forget about mental health professional. No one goes to mental health professional until unless they're very, very seriously ill. So the fact that we're not talking about it, we're not seeking help, and if someone goes for help, we tend to stigmatize. Ye to pagal hai. That's a typical thing, you will hear in Hindi, that anyone who's going to a counselor or mental health professional, they get stigmatized a lot. Um, she looks okay. I'm not sure why their parents are sending her to mental health problem. No one will marry her. Now this person suddenly becomes unmanaged, is not a marriage material. Teachers will look down in school. I remember we were running this school counseling program, and any students who came to us, and teacher would ask, you look okay, why are you going in mental health? Why are you going to a counselor? What's wrong with you? She will ask this question in front of everyone. Your family is not okay? They want you to do that? They will make you mad. They will make you mad. Everything is okay. So now she's saying statements like this to student in front of whole class. Look at the degree of stigma they have to do. We are doing in school, so children can come. Okay, we're expecting it students and teacher. We're trying to educate them, so it's easy assess. But amount of stigma itself in various condition is so high. This child never turn up for next session of counseling, despite so much wanting to have this counseling. So even if people want to come from here, society discourage them. The stigma again make it highly likely, youth will have mental health problems. So this is just a breakdown, some of these things. Lack of care, divorce, separation, domestic violence at home, poverty, peer pressure, school and parental pressure, addiction. A lot of these alcohol and drug, you start in adolescence as an experimental thing. People, young people just want to try them out. But many of these young people do get stuck. It more than try, they start using it continuously, and once they start using continuously, it becomes a circle. It becomes very difficult to break the circle. Social media influence, cell phone usage. It has been now found, a lot of these cell phone usage, especially the blue light that comes from the cell phone usage, can affect your sleep. And once your sleep is affected, you are inviting a lot of mental health problems, stigma, limited access to mental health. And pandemic has added its own, risk factors to this mental health. There's a lot of uncertainty. So we are believing we are close to end of pandemic, but no one knows. Schools are open, but school may close very soon. There may be third wave or fourth wave or whatever wave we are into, standing somewhere. There's still a lot of social isolation. The people are not able to connect that well. Many of the friends have moved to different villages because of pandemic. They can no longer stay in that state or city. Some schools have opened, some schools haven't. So in Haryana, most of the schools haven't. In Delhi, they have. So there's still a lot of hybrid education on. The academic pressure is really high. Remote learning, you are getting education, you have to have a mobile device, internet. That's itself a lot of pressure in terms of financially. And then you have to do a lot of things by yourself. There's no teacher to handhold you. There's no friend to support you. You can't copy that easily. So there's a lot of pressure to do a lot of things by yourself in online learning. Economic instability. A lot of students, adolescents and children have lost their family member due to COVID-19. And this entire financial struggle to have access to technology, internet to survive. So those are additional risk factors, putting young people into stress and then finally into risk for a mental health problem. So if you look at this slide, it seems like these last three slides seems like, it's a vulnerable period. They are going through a lot, and all of these factors can increase their vulnerability. That can increase their stress and then finally put them at risk to a mental health problem. But if they get the right kind of support, many of these risk factors can be mitigated and they can move towards the normal growth and development. So keeping time in mind, I will just skip all of this because, yeah. So now what you can do as an institute, as teachers, as education institute, your role is really important. In India, there's really shortage of mental health professionals to start with. There are just few thousand mental health professionals for million of population. And that also, they're expensive. There's a lot of stigma going to them. They're usually far away from the place where child is living. So that makes it very difficult for them to assess. So one kind of help that is very easily available to most of the adolescents is through their teachers. Teachers can be really, really important resources that can help, these students. Teachers are available to them. Teachers have spent a lot of time with them. You see them at least for 1 year. You are in the school, you're able to observe them. So you have a lot of advantage to help them. So what teachers can do, I think the first thing is, teachers and the school. I think teachers can't do it alone without the support of the school, is to create awareness. As I said, from my experience of working in school, most of the time teachers don't understand. They make statements, which can be really hurtful. It's not that they want to hurt or they want to put child in a negative, difficult state, but they don't understand about mental health. So having a mental health awareness for everyone, for all teachers, for students, it's really okay. It's okay to stay in message. It's not to be okay. Stress is common. Stress is, gonna happen in this phase of life. Stress can lead to mental health problem. It's okay to have difficulty. It's okay to talk about it. So some of the messages we discussed at the start, that's really important. We do send out in our schools, both for teachers and for the students. And this can be done in various ways. In our schools, in the schools we work with it, we organize assembly level activities. So we have, thought of the day or small skits which are done, or small paragraphs about mental health we share at assembly level, so everyone in the school can, hear them. Then we have wall magazine, where every month we pick up a theme, and children and students actually and teachers work towards contributing on this topic. So they get the newspaper clip, internet articles, drawing, anything they wish to contribute. They actually, do put in those side of it. So it create awareness. People do want to look at what's there on the wall, and some of them who are actually struggling will actually benefit from that information. Speak out box in some schools we have, where people can actually put in questions they have, queries they have, and once a month professional visit them and try and have assembly level activity or classroom level activity where they try and address these questions. These can be anonymous questions, so you don't want to name themselves, that's fine, or can be name questions, so we can come back and specifically address to you. Social emotional skill lessons, that's really important. I think entire CBSE curriculum and now RKSK also have been emphasizing that teachers need to train and integrate mental health curriculum in their classroom curriculum. So having life skills lessons as part of your day-to-day classrooms is really, really important. As I talked about, many of these adolescents, because their brain hasn't developed, they haven't picked up those skills. So when you're teaching them these skills, you're helping brain to develop faster and for them to pick up these skills more faster. Reward positive social behavior. Most schools don't do that, but we do. You get certificates for topping the class, for race and various time of assignments. But what about good behavior? What about students who help other students? What about students who protect other students from bullying? Do they get rewarded? And most schools don't. So we ask them to come up with these kind of lens, which is rewarding positive behavior and building healthy school atmosphere, and this hopefully help children adopt these practices, which is healthy for their mental health as well as for the other person. And lastly, something like the school health promotion committee can work. So again, all of these can't be done at an individual level. So we usually encourage schools to come with this small committee, which will comprise of students, teachers, principals, and possibly parents if they're available. And they decide each one what are the activities we like to take, what will be theme, and how they will be implemented. So that's one level where you can focus on the whole school and try and create awareness about mental health and about stress and how mental illnesses look like and what can be done, if you are struggling, and where you can seek help. So this is just some pictures from schools we work with. We largely work with very low income schools. So you will see they're not very fancy school, but these messages have really, these very activities have really helped students, and we've seen great participation. We have also used some multimedia like this. This is a small video we created, which talk about, how mental health is due to multiple factors: genetic, environment, interpersonal, behavioral. So we do, encourage schools to play this videos like these in their classrooms or in assembly, so students can see and get an idea about mental health. I'm not playing keeping time in mind, but I'm happy to share post, our discussion if you're interested to look at the video. So these small changes, some things like this, we encourage positive behavior, more celebratory activity in the schools, positive feedback, focusing on achievements. So teachers can do these small changes at the individual level in their classroom, in addition to the larger school level activities. This again can help to create healthy atmosphere in the school. Students feel more trusting of the teacher, and it also create a positive spirit for them that will also help them to cope with stress which they're experiencing at home or in other classes. And lastly is, look out for those individuals who are struggling. So these whole school activities and classroom activities will benefit a lot of adolescents and young people, but there's still a lot of individuals who will be struggling. These students need more help. They have multiple stress, and these just promotional activity may not be sufficient for them, and they need more individual support. So what are the students we are looking for? These are the sort of students we're looking for. We see any of these signs and symptoms, we call them as red flags. If you're seeing a child who's very withdrawn, suddenly, don't talk to anyone, doesn't interact with anyone in the class, doesn't interact with a teacher, makes no friend, child who experience very anxious, very nervous, very jittery when you talk to them, doesn't speak fluently, starts stuttering, you talk to them. The child who suddenly started showing decline in school performance. In class 8 was doing awesome, but in 9, suddenly there's a sudden decline in the performance. Physical appearance appear very unkempt, or dresses not as per the age, overly, more like a mature lady or a mature man. Show high degree of aggression, changes in their eating, doesn't get lunch, doesn't eat, doesn't share food with anyone. You observe some bruises, cuts on their wrists. They keep wearing full sleeves, keep hiding. Possibly they're doing a lot of self-harm. You see black eyes, beaten marks, which means they're being beaten at home. They're missing schools very frequently. They don't participate in any school's activity, and you could possibly smell of some alcohol or tobacco from them. These are the red flags. These are the students you really need to go and talk and support them. They will be possibly suffering from mental health problems. I can say they are possibly, not really. Many of people do show these red flags and they're able to recover out of it and able to manage, but many of them need help. So what we are looking for, these things are going to happen with most adolescents. But what we're looking at adolescents and young adults who are consistently showing these patterns. So these difficulties have been present for, 2 weeks or more. 1 day of withdrawnness, that's okay. These are adolescents. They are supposed to have a lot of mood changes because they're growing up. Some decline in school performance, they haven't performed, in one exam, that's okay. That's not a red flag. But you're seeing this change is consistently present for 2 weeks or more in multiple domains, then this is a red flag. So look at these signs, you look at them for multiple times. It's very important that, the student need help and you need to provide help to them in whatever ways possible. So what I can do, so just a brief summary, these are the 5 steps as a teacher you can surely do to help adolescent. Assess for their problem, try and understand what they're going. As I said, they're possibly having mental health problem, but we don't know until unless we talk to them. When you're talking to them, it's really important you listen non-judgmentally. They have enough adults in their life who will be telling them, do this, don't do this, this is right, this is wrong, you're a nuisance. They don't want one more adult. So this is really important because as a teacher, we are very used to instructional mode, do this, do that. But when you're talking to them, listening to them, you really have to change your cap and try and listen non-judgmentally. Listen to what they're trying to say. Listen to their perception. Don't say, I think this is right. I think you're thinking really long. This is stupid. Don't make comments like that because you're judging them and they will shut themselves off. Give reassurances and information because many of adolescents, as they're struggling, they don't have any idea, what is this phenomenon, what is happening to them. So any correct information you're able to provide to them will really help. Encourage self-help, encourage them to seek support, encourage them to adopt some strategies. So I am just going to skip all of them. So really important when you're assessing that, you approach a student in private. Don't say in the class, hey, you come here, I want to talk about you. Don't ever do that. Try and say some private space because you don't want to insult the child. You really don't know what they're going through. Start a conversation with them. Sometimes students may approach you, but most of the time it's you who are looking at red flag and really have to approach them. Talk to them and about their problems because you really care. You want to listen to their story. You don't want to label and interpret them. You don't want to start by saying, I think you're depressed. No, you really don't know. I think you are having phobia. Don't start with this. You have already labeled them. You have shut them down. You can restart by saying, I've seen you have been becoming really anxious when you're talking in the class. Do you want to tell me what's happening? So when you're doing that, you actually want to listen to their stories. They're good at telling stories. But the moment you label them, you're shutting them off. And also, none of us as a teachers are trained to know what is the diagnosis. So let's not do something which we are not sure of it, but do something which we are capable of it, which is talking to them, listening to their story, give them time. Maybe you call them for the first time, they will not share what they have to, but let them know you are available. They can come and talk to you. Surely, second or third time, they will surely come and talk to you. Once they know you are available, you are patient, they will come back to you. I'm going to skip many of this. These are some things I would like you to keep in mind, that when you're talking to them, don't trivialize them. These are things which are worrying to you because you're younger, you're so young. Don't worry, when you're older, you will forget about them. Snap out of it. It's just a phase. Tell me otherwise, I will complain about this to your principal. You know then what's going to happen. Patronize them, condense them, stereotype them. Girls are like this. I know all teenagers are nuisance. I also have one at home. And if you said something wrong, just standing by and enforcing, okay, I am right, not believing, you have made an error. So all of these things you want to avoid. The less you do it, the more you're going to win the trust of the adolescent, because they don't want to hear it's a phase. For them, it's not a phase. For them, it's a lot, and they can't handle. Telling them you snap out of it will really not work. You have to be saying, I understand you're going through a lot. Let's talk about it. Let's, tell me how I can help you in this process. Can I break it down for you? Can I put in support with someone who can help you with this process? They want to, have this feeling that you understand they're going through a lot and you are willing to help. They may not want any advice or tips from you, but all they want a supportive adolescent a supportive adult who believes in them, because they believe no one believes in them. So these are some of the sheets we give to teachers that can make it easy for them to talk to adolescent. I think we have already talked about listening non-judgmentally. So I'm just gonna skip that part. And this is most important, that we advise all teachers. When you're sharing, you're trying to understand adolescent problem, don't make them gossip stories. Students know very quickly when you're gossiping about them in staff room. So please avoid doing that, right? Don't share, what you heard from them to whole staff room and whole classroom. They will know, the information has been leaked. So confidentiality is really important, if you're trying to help the adolescent, and that's what they want to know, whether they're getting the right kind of privacy and confidentiality when they're talking to you. In some conditions, yes, confidentiality is difficult to attain, specifically if they're talking about self-harming themselves, suicide. You want to reach out and talk to other people to support them. But in most conditions, it's easy to give them that privacy because they are going to stress and all they're looking is some support. They will not come and talk to you about sexual problems if they know you're going to tell to their parents or you gossip about them in a staff room. So that's really important thing. That's one thing, that trust, if you can win their trust, it's easy way ahead to help them. You want them, give them reassurances, things will work out. I'm there to help. We can connect you. You can give them information and tips which you know of. Give them as information. Don't impose on them. Do this, I know. Tell them, I know this is something you can help. You can try out. See, this is a pamphlet I found on the internet. Read them. It has some handy tips. This may help you. So give them, don't impose, but, really give them suggestion. And, don't make them promises which you cannot stand on because they're struggling a lot. Another one, false promise will really make life difficult for them. So again, these are a lot of information available on the internet. I can share with you. These we developed in a project. We help teachers give out to students so they know it makes it easy for them to talk about it. Some tips for communication, anger management, and relaxation. We also, prepare, like I work in Delhi, Haryana. So we prepare helpline services. We give it to schools so they can keep it. If they feel any child is struggling, they came to know of it. They can share with students, and student can call these helplines and talk to the individual. So even if you're not able to talk and, answer the query fully, once you understand they're struggling, at least you can share this information. That can be also a good step to help them. And then, others help seeking. So once you understand some things are really, easily manageable, you might be able to support them, provide them information, build hope, take them right path. Other times you may realize, it's a lot. It seems a lot is going on. You may need to put them in touch with a significant caregiver or a professional, and you can support the process. It's really important in this process, you're not labeling them, because again, as a teacher, you're not trained to be labeled. What you have to understand, the child is feeling stress, is experiencing sign and symptom, which is not typical of their usual behavior. You need to understand what you can do to help them, and you need to understand where is your limit and where you need to refer them to a professional for help. And it's really important, the schools, you work together to put together at least some helpline, some professional you can reach out to, where you can send a child for more help if child is struggling. So I stop here. This is just one small case I've put together for you. This might be very common. So after listening to me, just think about what will you do for this child. This child has great difficulty in listening, doesn't follow any instruction in class, shouts at, get into fight with other children. And you have been noticing this behavior for quite a few days in this child. So if you were his teacher, what were the signs you will pick up? How do you think you can approach this child, and how do you think you can start the conversation with this child? So if anyone want to share their initial perception, how will they approach this child, what they will talk about, and what they will be concerned about this child here? Anyone want to share? If this was the student in their class, how will they manage this child based on what we have discussed, how you can approach them, what are the things you need to keep in mind, what are the red flags you need to be looking at? Talk to her, Pavitra, and how will you talk to her? What will be some initiate friendly talk? That's great, HP. So you want to be friendly, you want to talk in a warm, genuine manner, doesn't, make it feel like punishment, come to my staff room. You don't want to sound like that. Yes, in confidentiality, you would like to say, come and meet me in my staff room, or meet me at the class, post classroom, or meet me at some place where you think there's enough privacy when you can talk to this child. Yeah, asking him to share the issue. You can express your concern. That's very important. And I have been observing that you have been behaving slightly differently in classroom. I see sometimes you're getting angry. Do you want to tell me what's happening? Don't say something like this. I know you have been a nuisance in a class. You have been shouting and fighting with your friends. What's wrong with you? Don't ever use statement like this. Child will never tell you. Using statement, I've seen, you have been having difficulties in classroom. You're not getting along with friends. Do you want to tell me, what you have been going through? Maybe I'm able to help you. Tell them you're there to help them. You're not going to reprimand them. You're not going to complain them. Yes, giving assurance that you're there to help them. It's really important. So great, all of them, give them mind-changing activity. Yes, so before you start giving them mind-changing activity, you want to understand what's going on. Is child is having a lot of difficulty at home, and that's why they're feeling really irritated, and that's why they're angry at school, or they feel they're not able to form friends, and that's why they're showing a lot of anger. What's happening? Screening programs, yes, if you have screening programs in a school, you should, but most of the schools will not have them. So if you don't have it, I think the most important thing is to talk about them. There's this one question which has come twice, how we have to diagnose, how we have to figure out child is having a mental health problem. So I think, as I said in my slides to begin with, you should look for red flags. I think as a teacher, all you need to do is look for red flags. Diagnosing mental health illnesses is not your area, right? People go years of training to do that. If you're interested in that training, please enroll yourself, but you need to look for these red flags. If you're looking at any of these signs, these behavior in the children, and they're happening on a consistent basis, I think it's a signal to you that something is not right with the child. There's some issue they're going either with themselves or at home, and they need to be talked about. This is what you need to look for. Your role is not to diagnose them. You need to look for them. You need to talk them, understand. After talking to them, if you feel you can help them, please try and do that. If you think it's a lot, you can't handle, refer them to professional, arrange a helpline for them so they feel supported. You try and help them and you see you're not able to do them. That's also a good point to realize, after 2, 3, 4 weeks, I've been trying to help, but there's no change at all. Changes come slowly, but you will start seeing some change. If you're noticing no change, rather problems staying same or worsening, then also is a time to, reach out to the mental health professional and try and connect them either with a helpline or a professional nearby. The fact you have already built a rapport with them for 3 or 4 weeks, they will trust your advice. If you ask them now to consult a mental health professional, they will go to them. If you ask them to go to counselor, psychiatrist, they will go to them because they feel you're now acting in their best interest. The reluctance which was there initially will actually really, really come down. Okay, so great and great responses to see. I'm sorry, I have to really rush through, but this was how time is structured. We have 15, 20 minutes. I know there were a lot of questions sent to me. I will let the Pooja, someone in the group, to moderate. And if you have any questions, either from the list which was shared or new questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Yeah. Thank you so much, madam, for the very informative talk. Moving on with, I would like to request Dr. Vinay Kumar, sir, to begin with the interactive session. Over to you, sir.
Yeah, very good afternoon, everyone. So all participants, if you have any genuine questions, you can raise your hand. So I will unmute that particular participant and you can carry on with the question. So please raise your hand so that I can unmute yours. I think Preeti Telang, you can unmute. Preeti Telang. Preeti Telang, madam, you have to unmute yourself. I have given you the rights. Hello, Madam Preeti Telang. Okay, in the meanwhile, you can post the questions in the chat box also. There is one question in the chat box, ma'am. Can you comment on the role of effective parenting?
That's really important. I think we started about, when we're talking about risk factors, we talked about, how when there's a neglect, there's violence at home, there's poor emotional support at home, it does put them at risk for mental health problems. So having effective parenting where parents are supportive, listening, taking care of child basic need, the child has food to eat, is well dressed, like have proper clothing to wear, is going to school, they are listening to them, talking to them. So all these basic, parenting does help child to feel, more healthy, develop into a healthy adult. And lack of it can actually lead to problems, but that's not the only factor. I think I want to emphasize, many parents feel guilty if they haven't been able to do effective parenting. The child is lost and it's a gone case. Nothing, it doesn't happen. There are a lot of other supportive factors, even if they have struggle at, at home, but if they have good friends, good school support, good support from teacher, higher chances of, they're excelling well at school. So difficulties which they're having at home can be, managed with, these other supportive factors, these protective factors that can negate the effect, of a bad parenting. So I should not use the word bad parenting, but an ineffective parenting. So yes, parenting is important, but we also have to understand sometimes parents are really stuck and not able to provide best care because they're ill, they're struggling, they're not available. And other protective factors can really contribute to improve child health at that point.
Ma'am, another question. Does not socializing indicates health problem?
Yes, so withdrawn behavior, specifically the withdrawn behavior is a sudden change. This child was totally okay. Say few weeks back or few months back, they had few friends, they were interacting. And now suddenly you see they have stopped meeting everyone. They sit alone, don't go out in recess time, don't share lunch. That can be an indicator of mental health problem. But if a child always has been less socializing or prefers to sit alone, that may or may not be a mental problem. That can be also an indicator of personality. So if there's a change, sudden change, that surely indicates there's a risk for mental health problem. But otherwise, it can be nature of personality, it can be mental health problem. We need to talk and then we can understand.
Nowadays, students are identified, in general, with ignorant attitude. So how to overcome this as a teacher?
It will be good to understand what you mean by ignorant attitude. I am not sure what is ignorant attitude.
Maybe in class, if a teacher tells something, they don't care at all, whether it is academics or the moral things and all. So they just ignore all of a sudden. Like
So
that.
maybe, as I said, you can't fix one. You have to understand, you can't fix everything in one go. So as a teacher, you have to identify what is your priority. A lot of times, students are ignorant or quote unquote ignorant, or don't follow, because we are continuously focusing on everything which is wrong with this particular child. So few things, we encourage teachers to set up proper rules for, housekeeping the class. The way today's talk was started, there's a proper housekeeping rule set up. Every time a child is following those rules, everyone who perform good behavior actually get rewarded. You also talk about students who are doing good thing. Specifically, this child even does something very close to this good thing. You reward them, you encourage them. So, and then if you're a negative thing, just don't ignore, focus on them. Give them 1 morning, 2 morning, then leave it. Less attention given negative behavior and more attention given to positive behavior usually have helped many students, do better in classroom and follows teachers. But this has to be done over, weeks and months. So you have to do changes at classroom level and also for this child. And then you might be able to help. Nothing can be fixed. Tomorrow you say, I tried this and child is not improving. That's not going to happen. So you have to be really patient with the process.
Yes, Rupa ma'am, you can go ahead.
Yes, sir. Good afternoon, ma'am. Ma'am, could you suggest any way out to overcome borderline personality disorder?
I will say for borderline personality disorder, it's really important. One, I don't know if this child has borderline personality disorder, who has diagnosed them. As I said, it's really important. If we are talking about disorders, they are sent to mental health professionals for diagnosis. And it's good to get in touch with their counselor who can then guide you how to help with this child. You need to have a personalized plan when it comes to helping with this child. There is no whole classroom level plan which I can tell you can help this child.
Okay, thank you.
So any kind of children, like I think what Rupa ma'am raised, I will just like to follow from that. If you have students who have mental health problems, it will be good, if you can get in touch with their parents or counselor. They will be really able to tell you, do you need to do something differently as a teacher when you're interacting with this child? Some children will need a different interaction, other will not need a different interaction. They want to feel normal and want to be behaved like you are behaving with other students. So do get in touch with them and try and understand, how you can help as a teacher in the process.
Thank you, ma'am. And there is another question regarding if there is a single parent. So how to handle that situation very effectively? It will not be difficult to overcome some sensitive situations.
So we haven't covered anything about parenting. So it's opening a new Pandora. What is effective parenting? 2-parent situation, 1-parent situation. So maybe if that's something you are more interested to know about, parenting and how we can go about parenting, I will say let's keep it for a separate session. Here we talked about largely, as a teacher, how you can help, students and adolescents you work with.
Okay, thank you. And another question is, mood swing is a common problem in nowadays in young youth. Is there any therapy or remedial way to deal with this issue?
So, Veena ji, I can see this question also on the screen. So again, I would like to emphasize, as I talked about, some amount of mood swings are going to happen. As I talked about, adolescent is a phase, a lot of changes happening and they haven't developed stability in a lot of domains. So some of the mood swings are there. Generally, we encourage, as a teacher, if you notice these mood swings, ignore them. Don't focus too much attention on them. Don't get into, argument them. The more you give attention, argument, punishment for such behavior, the more you're going to aggravate them. So leaving them and not, giving any kind of reinforcement for their behavior is really important. But if this mood swing is something, having consistently, they are, having difficulties because of this mood swing. They are not able to focus on studies, or they are not able to carry out, interact with their friends, carry out day-to-day activities. You really need to sit down and talk to them. Mood swing can be due to many reasons. It can be due to stress. It can be due to mental illness. It can be, symptom of a severe mental illness disorder. So until unless you don't talk to them, it's really difficult. If you can't talk to them, as I said, you need to share some helpline or connect them with professionals who might be able to talk to them. So depending on, what we figure out, it's because of stress, it's because of, it's a natural stage of growth, it's because of an underlying mental illness. Accordingly, we can tell, what therapy or medication will work for this child.
Okay, thank you. Another question, does exercising actually help mental health? Maybe
It does.
Or pranayama kind of thing, whatever.
Yes, so there have been now scientific research to back this up. Culture, in Indian culture, we believe all these yoga and all are helpful for mental health. Now we have this whole literature which just back up that, every form of exercising, healthy exercising, whether it's yoga, it's physical activity, it's gymming, it's running, all of them do help with mental illness. Specifically, the child is feeling depressed. In psychology, there's this whole therapy called as behavioral activation. So here the focus is actually helping, work with a child, counselor work with a child and help them become more active. And through this, they can actually break through their depression. So yes, in nutshell, exercise and yoga do help with mental illnesses.
Thank you, ma'am. And another thing is how nowadays the students are having lack of attachment with the family members. So is there any solution to work on this?
So I would say again, these are very broad statements. Some part of it, I think, again, I said, this is a stage where child individuate. All adolescents move from family to more better peer connection at this stage. So that's a normal process of growth. As compared to previous generation, now it's more evident because, previous generation, we had less friends. We used to interact for friends possibly for 2-3 hours when you go on an evening. Now friends are accessible always on smartphone, social media. So now this attraction towards friend is much more as compared to previous generation, but that's a normal process of growth. Most adolescents want to have more stronger peer bonds as compared to, when they were young children. But when you say attraction and not listening to family, is it coming to the cost of, whether they're not spending at all any time with family, the ruckus at home? So I'm not sure what is it, but, it might be good for the parent to talk to the child. If you want the child to spend time with you, you can figure out, talk to them, give them very clear suggestion of what you would like to do with them and how this is also good for them. So what happened, most parents put them in guilt. You have grown up, you don't have time for your mama, you don't have time for papa, don't do like this. That really will not work on them. Tell them, you want to spend time with them. You want to do activities which are mutually enjoyable. Don't impose things, which you want to do, but something both of you decide to do it. You want to go to temple with them, but they don't want to go it. Okay, what you can do? Can you both of you go to market and at least buy grocery? Is this activity both of you do? So don't put them in guilt. Work with them out, mutually enjoyable activity and have specific activities to do with them and understand having peer bonds, wanting to spend more time with peers is normal in this phase. If child is not doing that, then we actually will be concerned about that child.
One last question from the participants. Vijay Lakshmi ma'am, I have given you rights, so you can just go ahead with the question. Vijay Lakshmi Dannawar madam, I have unmuted you. You can go ahead with the question. Okay, I think there is some technical issue.
I can see the question by Vijay Lakshmi ma'am. No, ma'am, it's not a guarantee that if child is a single child or if it's a single parent family, that is a 100% guarantee child will have a mental health problem. Any child, whether they're coming from a single family, a single parent family, or they're a single child or multiple sibling child, every child is at risk of it if they are not getting the right. If there's a genetic history or they are not getting the right kind of support from their school and their family. So everyone is risk, but not just being a single child or single parent family doesn't put them at very high risk. It makes it difficult for them, slightly difficult for them, but most of the children are able to cope and manage by the time they're able to reach adolescence. HPG, I don't know what is the solution, but I will say figure out what is the problem with her. Why she feel like crying every night, right? We don't even know why she feel like crying night. So what is the solution? Someone really need to talk to her, ask her what's going in her mind, what makes her feel like crying, what she cries about, what she thinks about it. So someone really need to talk about it before we jump to this solution. I think that's why in my slide, if you remember, giving reassurances come very late. Assess, ask about how they're going through, understand their theory, and then only we can give them some information, some reassuring, and some help if required. But we really need to understand what they are going through, and then we can guide them. If something is really difficult happening at home, and that's why they at the end of the day they cry, or they feel they are not good enough, nothing is good and going on their life, that's why they're crying. So we really need to understand what's happening. Or they are feeling, they're actually going through depression. They just feel like I feel sad all through the day, nothing is good in my life, I don't feel motivated, and that's why I keep crying in the night when no one sees us. Then this person possibly need to visit a counselor for some psychological therapy. So solution depends on once we understand why this crying behavior is happening.
Yeah, thank you all the participants. I think we are running out of time. It's already 3:31. And I thank the speaker for today's Dr. Kanika Malik. In fact, it was a very enlightening session, and all the participants were actively engaged throughout the session. It's almost 90 minutes now. I think every minute there were questions in the chat box or the interaction. So it was a lively session, madam. Thank you so much. Dear participants, the feedback link has been shared in the chat box. So please do give your feedback. And thank you so much, madam, once again. Thank you all the participants. We are winding up the program. Thank you.
Thank you for giving me such a great opportunity. I hope all of you found something helpful of this session and take it back to the classrooms and help young people around you to be more better in their education and their life. Thank you.
Thank you.
I would also like to express my deep sense of gratitude to our beloved chairman, sir, and all the esteemed management members. Thank you all. Feedback link has been sent in the chat box. I request all the participants to fill up the same. Thank you.